22 July is a movie that shows a series of tragic attacks that led to the death of 77 people and the injuries of hundreds in Oslo, as well as at a youth camp in Norway. This is a true story that shocked the world when it happened. I remember it being talked a lot in the news 7 years ago. This review is going to be a little bit different because there's two different versions that cover this tragedy. Norway released their version of the movie Utøya July 22 earlier this year, and the American version just came out on Netflix today. It's called 22 July. And I'm going to be reviewing and comparing both of these movies. Several people in the comments for my trailer reaction for 22 July let me know about the Norwegian version, so thank you for that because I watched both movies back to back and they both take a very different approach to this event. Each movie has their strengths and they have a totally different feel to them. I'll start off with the American version. Paul Greengrass directed this. He directed the Bourne Identity trilogy, Captain Phillips, as well as United 93, and that's the closest to what 22 July is. This story is told in three different parts. The first part covers the shooting. The second and third parts cover the aftermath, one of them following a story about Norway's political system and the other about the recovery of one of the students who was shot. This tries to give perspective on how everyone reacted to the event, not just the shooting itself. The opening 30 minutes are all about the shooting. Anders Breivik detonated a bomb in Oslo as a distraction to then dress as a police officer, travel to Utøya Island, and then shoot many young teenagers and kids. It's extremely hard to watch and not everyone will want to. But it's an event that really happened, and I think as far as true event movies go, the way they filmed the movie was really tasteful. The camera doesn't do a lot of lingering. They show the event for what it really was. There is a lot of shaky cam and it can get distracting at times, but for the most part it works here because it just shows the chaos of what everyone was feeling in those moments. After the opening, we then follow two different stories. We follow the recovery of one of the students who was shot multiple times, and we see how this event affected him as well as his family. He's trying to process everything that happened as well as trying to get his life back on track. Another interesting storyline is the lawyer who has to defend the shooter, Anders Breivik. He knows what he's doing is wrong, but at the same time, it's his job to defend him. It's in these moments that we learn more about the shooter, his political motivations for why he did this horrible thing. These storylines are very emotional and they're powerfully acted, but I think this movie tries to tell too many different storylines and they don't have enough time to give them the exploration that they need. Had this been a TV miniseries, I think it would have been better. They would have had longer to tell the full story. It's already almost 2.5 hours long, and that still wasn't long enough. The story takes place in Norway, and they do use Norwegian actors, but they have them speaking English, which does feel kind of weird. Since it's releasing in America, I get why they wanted them to speak English, but it just doesn't feel as authentic. It does lose some of the impact. I think it would have been better had they used their original language. Now, the Norwegian version takes a completely different approach. It doesn't show the aftermath, it only focuses on the shooting, and the whole thing unfolds in real time with a single camera. There's no edits, there's no music. The only thing you hear are the gunshots being fired and the panic from everyone on the island. It feels like a documentary, it feels like you're really there on the island, and it's a really powerful interpretation. And it creates a sense of realism that's even more intense than the American version. Once the shooting begins, there's 77 minutes left of the movie, and that's the exact length of the real shooting. This movie is as realistic as possible, and it's devastating to watch, and it's also even harder to watch knowing that this really happened, and not only that, it only happened 7 years ago, and it happened exactly like this. And because of that, these movies are not going to be for everyone. Some people want to remember these events, other people want to forget them. One thing I liked more about the Norwegian version is that they don't focus on the shooter. You don't even really see him, it only focuses on the victims, and I think that was a better approach. The American film does try to delve into the reasons why he did this, as well as his political views, and even though the movie doesn't try to reason with the shooter, it still tries to figure out why. And I liked it better when they didn't focus on the shooter, they just focused on the victims and the little acts of heroism that comes out of everyday average people when something like this happens. I think it made for a more powerful story, and it's a tribute to those who lived and died on that day. But the Norwegian version does end the movie right there. We don't get to see what happens afterwards, and because of that, there's not a lot of hope to the movie. That's something I liked more about the American version. We do get to see the aftermath and how people were affected and how it brought people closer together. The Norwegian version is more authentic and realistic, and the American version is more dramatized. Overall, I think the Norwegian version is the better movie, but I'm glad they were both made. They both complement each other nicely, and they both have strong aspects about them. And they feel different enough that I think you should watch both versions. They make great companion pieces. They're heavy, and it's really hard to watch and take in. But it's good to see movies like this just to reflect on life. I would give the Norwegian film Utøya July 22 a 9 out of 10, and the American film 22 July an 8 out of 10. The real event was only 7 years ago, and some people think that it's too soon to be making movies like this. So do you think these movies were made too soon? I want to hear your opinion in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe for more movie reviews every week.